guys, it's Ariel
And Jason.
from Fix My Books, and today we are going to talk about how to close a CCPC Part 4, filing the final tax returns. And as we said in the last video, this is actually the meat of this video series.
Yeah, this one, pay attention to it because, this is the thing where you actually have to submit something.
Okay, so let's get started.
So, number 1, file the final T2 income tax return. Number 2, ensure all the taxes are paid. Number 3, complete the Form TX19, and we'll show you a copy of this, asking for a clearance certificate. And step 4, or steps and procedures for the Form TX19 and the clearance certificate. Number 5, distribute the remaining assets. And number 6, some other important considerations.
Okay, so obviously you have to file the final T2 corporate income tax return. So this will calculate your federal income tax and credits, and this is going to say, how much income tax you owe at the end of the year, or like at the end of your final year.
Or if you have a net loss.
Yeah. So just make sure you attach all relevant schedules such as Schedule 1, Schedule 8. If you guys are familiar with capital cost allowances, that's your depreciation.
Yeah, Schedule 1 is basically the net income and loss calculator of the tax return. And then include any financial statements that detail the corporation's financial position at the time of the dissolution, if necessary.
Yeah. Okay. So number 2 is ensure that all taxes are paid. So if number 1 is to calculate how much taxes you owe, number 2 is to actually pay the taxes that you owe.
What will usually happen with this is you'll file the final return, you'll get your notice of assessment, and then obviously just pay the tax. You'll also need to file your final GST, HST return. So this one can be a bit awkward because if you're closing the company by a certain day and you have a particular year end
that doesn't match your GST
that doesn't
schedule.
match the GST schedule, you're going to have to file this out of whack a bit. But that's fine. Just make sure that it's filed, it's paid, or any refunds are distributed into the company.
Same with payroll taxes.
Yeah, so payroll taxes as well. Make sure all the employees are paid up, and all the other payments like the CCP and the EI are all paid up as well.
And make sure that you file their T4s as well. So let's say you're closing the company in June 30 because that's your year end. Make sure that you still file their T4s the following January. That's still needed.
Yeah, this is quite an important one because sometimes people will close their company and then they'll work out in January that they need to file these documents, and they won't be able to because the company is closed. So make sure that you file these before totally closing off everything.
Yeah. Okay.
So complete Form TX19 asking for a clearance certificate. So TX19 is the form used to request a clearance certificate from the CRA, and a clearance certificate certifies that all the amounts which the taxpayer is liable under the ITA have been paid, or that the Minister of National Revenue has accepted the security for payment. So security for payment is if you owe a large sum of money and you don't have the cash and you're not able to pay it, you'll have to put up some sort of security as a deposit.
And now we'll show you what a Form TX19 looks like. Okay, so this is what the Form TX19 looks like when you're asking for a clearance certificate. It's not that long.
Yeah, it's really only 2 pages, and 1 page is instructions. But, this is usually if you're filing a final tax return for someone, or, obviously closing off a company, or a trust, or an estate. So it's kind of all different types of entities, and it's what you do to just make sure that, or to clarify with the CRA, we want a clearance certificate because we're saying we've paid everything out. And we'll give you this link in the description, and this is just some instructions on applying for a clearance certificate, why you need it, how to prepare one, and also, processing times, which can sometimes be important, like if you're, waiting for something else in the sequence of events to occur, you'll need to know how long this will take.
And just note of this. Take note of that.
Yes, if the legal representative does not get a clearance certificate before they distribute the assets and there are any tax amounts owing under the ITA or Part 9 of the Excise Tax Act to the CRA, they are personally liable for the unpaid amounts up to the value of the amount of assets distributed. So this is why it's actually so important. So if you're ever filing tax returns, like, and you're dealing with estates and trusts and you're the fiduciary, and you just go ahead and distribute stuff to the beneficiaries without getting a clearance certificate, you know, you as the fiduciary or the treasurer are going to be in a world of pain.
Yeah.
Sorry, I should have said earlier, not treasurer, trustee. My mind was elsewhere.
Okay.
So required documents. Along with the TX19, you must submit, obviously, the final tax return, which we just spoke about, so the T2, corporate income tax return, statements of assets and liabilities, so a list of the corporation's assets and liabilities. And basically very similar to a balance sheet. Mm-hmm. And it's just making sure that these assets are going to be distributed and the liabilities are going to be paid. So resolution authorizing the dissolution.
We discussed this previously in the other videos. So
yeah,
if you are not sure,
part 2.
Yeah, if you're not sure what to include and things like that, you would need to make sure. Yeah, board and shareholder resolutions. So you need to make sure that you have this beforehand as well. Okay, so again, we showed you the form, so just complete the form and then attach the required documents. And then in the form itself, it actually says where you need to like mail it or send it out.
Yeah, where you need to send it in.
Okay. So you can mail it or fax it. I don't know anyone who has a fax machine anymore.
Yeah, a lot of people just use the online portal to submit these, but you know, if you cannot submit them via e-file or netfile or whatever, just simply mail it in. But please use certified mail, so make sure that someone needs to sign for it, and you know, you have a tracking number and everything, because what you want to, and also keep the receipt that you sent this in. And the reason why is if you ever
get lost,
if it ever gets lost and the CRA say you didn't do this, you can say, well, I did, here it is, right? Yeah. And you need to make sure it's sent to the right address. So always make sure you find the right address online first before you send it in, and follow the instructions for the correct address, because different places have different addresses. Wait for the assessment center and clearance certificate. So the CRA will assess the final tax return, verify all the taxes, interest, and penalties have been paid, and then they'll issue the clearance certificate. So once they are satisfied with all the liabilities have been settled, they will issue a clearance certificate, Form TX21. This certificate certifies that all the amounts for which the corporation is liable have been paid or secured. So the final distribution, you distribute the remaining assets. Now, this is the fun stuff. After receiving the clearance certificate, you can proceed with the final distribution of any remaining assets to the shareholders. Ensure that the distribution is done in accordance with the corporation's bylaws and the resolution authorizing dissolution.
Yeah, but guys, remember, before you distribute the remaining assets, you have to pay the creditors first. Like in part 3, settling financial obligations, don't just think, oh, we got a clearance certificate, like that's it. Like, make sure you follow the procedure, okay? If you're just watching this video, make sure you watch videos part 1 to 3 before this portion.
Yeah, and make sure you also read your corporation's bylaws, because there may be a specific way in which these things need to be distributed. So that's always something to make sure you do first. You know, don't just get your information from YouTube.
Yeah. Okay, so some important considerations. So timeliness, ensure that all filings and payments are made promptly to avoid penalties and interests. Record keeping. Keep copies of all submitted forms, schedules, financial statements, and correspondence with the CRA for your records. So we said this before, just because you close your corporation doesn't mean, okay, that's it, that's the end of it. Make sure you keep all these records at least for like 5-6 years.
Yeah, you can always be reviewed. Usually the time in which they're going to review a tax return would be 3 years, but the statute does extend beyond that, and extends based on different types of taxes that are owed.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to go through the list of them, but just make sure that you keep your records. A safe bet would be 5 to 6 to 7 years.
Yeah.
And make sure that they're all in one place so that you don't, lose anything. And when you do have a review, it's easy to access them. And especially if you have any digital records, just keep a copy of them, on your hard drive, etc.
Yeah. And then lastly, professional assistance. Consider seeking the assistance from a tax professional or accountant to ensure that all steps are completed accurately and in compliance with CRA requirements. So, just double check that everything you're doing complies with your own corporation's bylaws, complies with, the CRA and whatever they need. Because the last thing you want to do is to mess up closing a corporation.
Yeah, as well as provincial. And that's something that usually people forget too. So they'll go ahead on like a federal level with the CRA, but they will forget the provincial level. And, there may be specific requirements depending on your province. So always be aware of that. And it's why it's good to go with someone that, knows how to do this. And, they're even located next to you or located in the same province. It would be a big plus.
Yeah. Okay, so that's it for now. Again, this is going to be part 4 in our 6-part video series, and if you haven't yet, make sure you watch parts 1 to 3. If you have any questions, please comment them down below, and I hope you guys learned something from this video. And once again, this is Ariel
and Jason
from Fix My Books. Have a great day.